So we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening. Thanks everybody for coming. This is the Games in the Government panel. My name is Alan Brooks. I am here of my own accord, but I happen to work at the Kennedy Center. I have been a part of a group called the Federal Games Guild, or the Federal Interagency Working Group on Interactive Technology and New Media. Right? Isn't that it? You know the title. Is that?
Sure.
Okay. And we'll just go down the line, do a quick name and where you are or what you're doing in the government. Everyone on the panel here is works for a federal agency in some capacity or another. I'll lead a couple of guided questions for the assembled group. We'll talk about what everyone's doing, and then open it up for Q&A at the end. And also, since we do this at all of our meetings, so we've been getting together for 5 years in various conference rooms around DC, talking about what work is being done in the federal government in interactive technology, games, VR, and stuff. And one of the things we always do is what we're playing now, so we can do that now too. I'm currently playing Doom 2016 there.
Nice. I'm Eric Martin. I work at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Should I use this thing? So our office is a scrappy little group that oversees everything to do with science and technology across the federal government. And we have been driving forward the idea that video games can be used for positive social impact for 4 or 5 years now, as long as the FGG's been around. And I have 2 predecessors ahead of me, Constance Steinkuhler and Mark DeLora, who paved the way on a lot of this work. And in the last year and a half, we've done a lot of next steps on that, like we did a White House Game Jam, we launched a prize challenge to create VR, to support the creation of VR in education. We did a White House Gameathon where we had esports live streaming from the White House to get people to sign up for healthcare.gov. So some really good milestones where we actually made the White House a gamer-friendly thing. Also, I love the diva costume in the back. Shout out. 'Cause I am playing Overwatch.
Eric's playing Overwatch right now.
So yes.
Also, these are the agencies. I forgot to skip ahead. So these are all federally funded. Your tax dollars are being spent actively in these agencies on game development or support and production. So you should know. Ed, I've got yours up next. Do you want to do yours and just tell me when to advance?
Hi, I'm Ed Metz from the U.S. Department of Education
No, it's fine. You didn't give me
and the Institute of Education Sciences, which is the research arm of the Department of Education. And my program is a program that game developers who are interested in teaching kids, it's a program you should know about. The program provides funding to developers to develop games for learning that can go into classrooms when you finish developing them and become commercially viable. And you can flip the slide if you don't mind. It's called the Small Business Innovation Research Program. So if you're with a for-profit small business and you want to partner with the researcher to evaluate how effective your game is at teaching kids, then it's definitely a program that should be on your radar. The past 5 or 6 years, the program has made, I think, more than $25 million has funded more than $25 million to game developers. So it's one of the most, one of the strongest funders of games out there. The next cycle is that the next, we actually just had a deadline last week on January 5th, so you missed that one by a few days, but it's going to take some time to prepare your proposal. So you can think about applying next year as well. You can apply to the National Science Foundation's program and some other federal agencies. So definitely get my card. My contact information will be up in a minute. So just quickly, to give you some examples of some games that we funded and to talk about how those games are transforming education, I prepared a slide looking back and looking to the future. We'll see. So this is how I learned. That's how I set this talk up today. I thought, well, how did I learn when I was in school now 30 years ago? When I learned photosynthesis, I looked at that picture in my textbook, and I tried to absorb it. But through a video game, next slide please, you actually have to do photosynthesis. In this game, Reach for the Sun, by Filament Games, students have to plant a seed and grow the sunflower by doing all of the different interactions that photosynthesis entails. And if you're successful, then you grow a beautiful sunflower, and if you fail, the sunflower dies. And it's really neat because it goes through the months of the year from March, April, all the way through December. And if you make it to December, it's going to start snowing, and you're not going to successfully reproduce seeds. Now, obviously, the game in itself is exciting. How a teacher uses the game to teach less, to instruct, and to reinforce what needs to be learned is a key component as well. So if you're developing games for the classroom, you're thinking about not only the game, but how the teacher's going to use it. Next, please. This is the ball and stick molecular model that I used in my chemistry classes. I ended up as a psychologist, not as a chemist, but I won't say any more about that. Next slide, please. Modernizing the ball and stick, a company called Shell Games is developing Happy Atoms. Happy Atoms includes the ball and stick, but also, but also an app that takes a picture of your model as you're making it. So the app will tell you if your model is accurate or not, and they're also gamifying Happy Atoms. Next slide, please. To allow for competitions and gameplay in a classroom environment. Next, please, thank you. This is a history game called Mission US, teaching students about the Great Depression there, and that's an old picture that you see that we would have looked at in a book that we would have read.
Or the National Archives.
Next, please, thank you. And in the video game, the students need to take on the role of individuals living in the Great Depression. So it's sort of like a choose your own adventure model. And these games are actually available for free on the Mission US website. There are five of them in all, and they're really amazing because they really force students and children and adults like me to think about whether I should grow more crops or get more cattle, and to understand the economics in the Great Depression, and to try and survive as long as possible. Next slide, please. This is the digital worksheet that we all, some of us loved. I should have put a Scantron on there. I'm obsessed with Scantron now. Next slide. Instead of the digital worksheet to learn your math, why not play a game like Was It Trouble, where you rotate a dial and you figure out whole numbers and figure out patterns of whole numbers and learning math. So it's not learning math anymore through rote memorization, but through gameplay where you have to get a feel and represent math in different ways. Next slide, please. And I think that I could have gone on and on, as you can see. I decided to stop there to not overwhelm you right out of the gate. But nonetheless, if you are a game developer, or you obviously are a game developer, this is the right place to talk to you. There are some other ways to build capacity for you to be able to think about applying to a program like this, and I'm here to talk to you about that. Thank you very much.
And Carl, why don't you go, and then we'll do your slides, Lakita, and then we'll open it up.
Cool.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Carl Rauscher. I work at the National Archives and Records Administration in the Education and Public Programs Office. I didn't start off there. I was actually in the military where I learned how to take systems apart, put them back together, and make them work. And I've been kind of doing that in just about every kind of field I get. So when I had the opportunity to work in this office, one of the things I took a look at and said, okay, what do you need to help us improve on? What do you need to make better? And they said, you know, we really just need to engage with the public more. We need to bring them in, make it so that they're not just looking at a static sheet of paper or a scan of a sheet of paper. Make them understand the story that's behind it. Make them, I said, well, then you're really looking at games. You want the interactivity. You don't want them to read the paper. You want them to know the story behind the paper. So let's tell them that story. Well, I got kind of some head shrugs and kind of, well, I'm not too sure what you're talking about or thinking about, so let's start small. So that's kind of what we've been doing since then, and that's kind of why I'm sitting up here, because I am positive that out of everybody sitting here in the audience, someone is working on a game somewhere that says, man, if only I knew just a little bit more about that subject, or I wish I could find some really good artwork that's representative of it, but I just don't know where to go, or I don't want to fight with, trying to get the copyright or paying fees or whatever. All of our stuff at the National Archives is yours. It's all publicly available. We're trying our level best to make as much of it available as we can, even more than we can. But quite honestly, we could fill this entire room full of papers and then fill probably another 50 rooms. And we still wouldn't even come close to touching everything that we've got.
It's free.
And it's all free. So the next time you guys are thinking about, well, what can I learn more about, the Depression so I can make a really good story or find a really interesting take on it, we want you to consider us, obviously. And if you guys are looking for, help and support, talk to me. I'd love to hear what you guys are working on and help you if I can.
All right. I'm Lakita Edwards. I work at a small independent agency called the National Endowment for the Arts. Some of you may have heard of it. I like to call it the other NEA. And what I've been playing, since that's a question on the table, it's holiday time, so apples to apples, because Cards Against Humanity, it's just not.
Doesn't work for grandma.
No, it doesn't. So I'm an arts education specialist at the NEA, and in the arts education division, we focus on youth programs in the arts and all artistic disciplines, including media arts. So that's part of why I'm here with this cool group of Gov geeks. And this slide actually illustrates some language from our guidelines at the NEA. You're going to see words like inspire, fresh, play, transformative. These are really pulled from our guidelines, true words for a government agency. We have a unique mission in that we're really focused on everything that the arts provide all communities in terms of building their creative capacities. The arts can heal, the arts can teach, the arts can challenge. And you'll also notice wonkier words up there like assessment, results, measurement, professional development. We support all of that for the arts. Next slide, please. And so in terms of who can apply to the NEA, 501c3s, other nonprofits, universities, tribal governments, and other, communities that, you probably are very much familiar with, like a Boys and Girls Club, faith-based organizations. And if some of you out there are saying, I would love to apply to the NEA, but I don't fit that group, look at our funding stream from a multiplayer mindset. Chances are, if you are a game developer, you know a museum, you know a theater, you know a Boys and Girls Club. So we support collaborative partnerships and really encourage individuals to look at it from that standpoint. Next slide. So one of the things to keep in mind is that the NEA does support video games as an art form. We really came out loud and proud about this around 2012, and we got some flack, as you can imagine. There are some people who don't believe video games are art. None of them are here in this room.
Except you.
But that's out there. And for us, we're like, you can't have a game without a musician, without a dancer, without a visual artist. And so for us to support video games as art, that's our way of acknowledging the contributions of artists alongside technologists in creating games. So for us, it's no question. And also, it's part of our mission to support really innovative projects that fall outside, quite frankly, traditional fine arts barriers and boundaries. So I bring your attention on this slide. We have a report called Creativity Connects, which is really looking at, from a wider lens of who out there defines themselves as an artist, and that's actually growing and changing thanks to technology. We also have an article featuring Asi Barak, who was the former co-founder of Games for Change, great organization. And he has an article about how indie game developers and arts funders don't mix, but here's how to fix that. And he gives us some recommendations because, as I mentioned earlier, our funding streams can be challenging to navigate. But he brings up ideas such as perhaps funding incubators or portfolios as opposed to individual projects for the field, so that way the whole sector can grow. So we're really open to that. And it's not impossible, obviously, to get funded at the NEA because we've funded video games before. Next slide. On this screen is actually an example of a video game, Walden. Okay, imagine a 19th century rough guide to nature turned into a video game. I mean, just a show of hands, how many people want to read 300 pages of Henry David Thoreau's Walden right now? How many people would much rather play a game about Henry David Thoreau's Walden? Right, exactly. So Tracy Fullerton, she's a brilliant experimental game designer at University of Southern California, USC Game Lab. She created this game around Walden. And it's really, really interesting because you're thinking, how can you game that? Actually, one of her inspirations for creating this game was Animal Crossing. And she also really felt that young people probably wouldn't have the patience to read Walden, but if they saw it as a quest, as a journey of discovery, then maybe there's something there. So that was kind of her core question. And that's how you advance in the game, through reflection and through discovery. So the NEH, our sister agency, has also funded this.
National Endowment for the Humanities.
Thank you. So
sorry.
it's really a really great game. Keep your eyes out. I think it's going to really go wide in 2017. So next slide. So we also, in addition to funding games, we also fund media arts education through game design workshops for youth. And so I want to bring to your attention a project from Writers in the Schools in Houston. And they're actually using game design as a way to enhance writing skills. Basically, they're approaching it from the standpoint that a video game can be another kind of publishing platform for students, which is really cool. And they're finding that students who struggle with writing actually are excelling in this format because of the iterative design of creating a game and going, okay, I didn't get it right this time, but I want to focus and try it again and again. And some students have, created some really personal games. There's one student who created a game about his struggles with scoliosis. And I think they've partnered with GameStar Mechanic, and actually the slide, you'll see some of the other partnerships, including their local arts agency. They've also partnered with the city of Houston, as well as Eline, and some other games. So it was really interesting that this game had a really cross-sector approach, and it really brought out, the role of video games in terms of connecting learners, shifting students from being strictly, consumers of games to creators and informed creators. And that's what really excites me about my job in arts education at the NEA.
Thank you. I forgot to plug the one thing that I've been working on too, which is is there any teachers here? No? One? Okay. For you guys, we're releasing, I work for the digital learning platform here at the Kennedy Center. We've been producing or developing a tabletop role-playing game system for teaching high school literature, and that's going to be coming out in February along with our 9th grade LARP about Romeo and Juliet. So they'll be freely available on the Kennedy Center website sometime soon, and tell me why they're terrible, teachers. Thank you. So this is us. Ways to connect. I'll leave this up for the duration. I'm going to give you a quick forward. We do have some of these games that are available to play. A lot of them are the Department of Ed SBIR games. They're available at this link. I'll put this up again. You'll all get a chance to get this information. I see lots of photos. I promise I'll bring it back. I promise. Okay.
Could you post the whole slideshow somewhere?
Sure. That's a great idea. All right. So, why? What do you guys get out of this as agencies? What's the point? Ed?
Well, I mean, we're running federal funding programs with the goal to positively impact education and how students learn in our country. And games are now more welcome in schools, so we need to create some great games and build them with the learning sciences and do good research to show that they work, so that our country will have effective learning games. So that's a pretty straightforward answer.
So to build on the education piece too, so I was previously at Department of Ed in Ed's World and other awesome, wonderful people over there, and so every game is a learning game, and it just depends on what it's teaching you, and so like we can use that power for really powerful impact and to get people to think about things in new and creative ways. And so, and then an even more specific example in education is like, I played World of Warcraft a shit ton in high school, and I got a tremendous amount of value out of it. But in World of Warcraft, when you reach level 80 or 100, or what's the max level now? I'm not sure, 105 or something. But you don't take like a bubble sheet test to prove that you're good at World of Warcraft when you hit that level. Like, that would be dumb. Like, the fact that you reached that level and you were good enough at the game to get there is indicative of your skill level at playing that game. And so if you take those two things and you recognize that games are teaching you something and they are inherently assessing your ability to do that thing, you can create really powerful tools out of that. And so just in education, it's like very clear that there is a win scenario there. Another one was I mentioned we did this Twitch live streaming thing where we told Twitch, you can bring a bunch of your esports streaming people to the White House, set them up for 8 hours, steal the eagle out of the Secretary of War room and put it up on the stage, and like just do whatever you want. And all that we ask is like, in between the gaming, you talk about healthcare.gov, blah, blah. But yes, do it. And it was awesome because we had these esports people who were popular, they had their own communities, they had their fans, and then they were talking about healthcare.gov, but then they started talking about their personal experiences, getting healthcare, needing that service, needing access to a doctor, needing access to mental health care, and like all of these things. And totally untapped, huge community of gamers who are watching that content, who we have never tried to send that message to before. You know, like the president has met with YouTubers, which is sort of, reaching out to the digital world, but what about gamers? Like, why don't we go to them?
Did you guys see marked? Have you guys been able to measure the outcomes of that yet? Have you?
So we got 200,000 consecutive viewers who were then engaging with the healthcare.gov site.
Oh, wow.
We're still waiting to see in terms of like the actual sign up for people getting plans through healthcare.gov. We are on a bit of a timeline. So you should go to healthcare.gov if you don't have health insurance.
That's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start, Lakita. The Smithsonian said games are art.
Yes.
We all agree games are art. So what now? Like, the debate's over.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've got a new official art form. Also, there's the National Standards of Arts, National Arts Standards of Learning.
Mm-hmm.
Classify games as new media under a whole standards-based educational profile.
Media
So,
art
like,
standards, yeah.
what does this all mean? What do we do now that we have this new art form that we can teach and we can fund? Well, you start, and then everybody.
Right. Well, I mean, I feel that the battle has been fought and won, obviously, with games, being legitimized as an art form. And some would say, actually, there are multiple art forms within games. But I think right now it's really connecting the dots of recognizing, this artistic, discipline, and the uses that it can have in our everyday lives. Game designers, game creators, game players are great problem solvers. So for us as an agency, we're really interested in supporting projects where the gaming community can really be a part of helping us figure out some of these wicked problems, like equitable access to education. Also thinking about how games can be used to heal. Our agency has supported a really great partnership with Walter Reed for veterans. So maybe there's an opportunity to look at games in terms of building empathy. I know there's also an opportunity to think about games and designers working together at the healthcare system. So really the next step, I think, for us is to really, get to know the gamers in our communities, and plug them into the conversations, to have them be at the table, to make change, to make an impact. So that would just be great if we could have, gamers in residence in the schools, for example. That would be wonderful. And we would support a project like that, by the way.
There's so much money, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, comparatively, like,
Could be more.
if you're getting started and you're interested in being a developer, are there developers here? Lots of you guys that are wanting to get, yeah, I mean, this is a way to get the reps that you need as a professional. These are the ways to get access and a spotlight on you in a way that you might not have thought of prior to this.
To build on that too, even if like you get 50,000 or whatever you get from like NEA or from Ed, like then you get to use the seal of a federal agency on your game. And that's pretty awesome. So just throwing that out there. It's not just the money, you also get a lot of clout.
Well, and Carl,
I was going to say, speaking on the cloud issue, nowadays, more than ever, the question comes down as to authenticity. What facts are you putting out, and are they really facts, or are they someone's opinion of what a fact should be or could be or would be?
No comment.
I was going to say, one of the things that I like to be able to tout with what we have is, we have the primary source for a majority of what's going on. The trick is, it's kind of like a bunch of footprints on the beach. Each one of those footprints is another document or another artifact or another picture or image that we have. And it really takes a lot of work for somebody to go through and connect the dots and try to say, okay, where were people going and why would they change and why did they move? And a lot of people, that's just too much work. So they're much easier to turn to a flashy little headline or something like that. Well, when you're talking about with the government service, we need to service everybody. And our core mission at the National Archives is to take all of these documents and all of this history and all of these recordings of what your government has been doing for 200 and something years and make it available to you. And what better way to do it than to take advantage of every single media that we possibly can. Back in the day when it was just reporters who were coming in because they wanted to do a little bit of factual research, little backstory on when the government agency created or who was running it, they would come to us. And then it was people trying to reconstruct their family trees. So they'd come to us and look through our census records, or maybe they'd look through a personnel record if they knew their family member was in the military or was in civilian thing. But there's so much more that we're finding out there that we've been collecting all this time that can be used in more than one way. But we're also finding out that researchers just aren't that interested in digging in anymore. And if I know anything about the games and gaming industry, we're the people who love to dig. We're the people who love to say, I don't care if you said, that it has to be A to B to C. Well, I want to go over here. I want to see what's happening over here. It's a virgin field. And like I said, so anything we can do to help make that, raise awareness of it and to make it available to it is a win in our book as far as our agency goes.
And do you classify, you feel that way about whether or not, this is leading into my next question, whether or not those games are considered games for impact, serious games, or commercially viable Gears of War type AAA titles?
I look at it this way. If somebody wants to come do research with us because they want to write a book, we don't say to them, is this going to be a history book? Is this going to be a textbook? Is this going to be a serious piece of nonfiction that's going to be literature to
So
stand up there with Hemingway?
So did
No.
DICE come for Battlefield 1? Were they there all day long, every day for a month?
No, I wish.
That's kind of the question. So there's this term that we use a lot in our conversations: serious games or games for impact or games for change. What is the difference? What between that and a AAA title, Breath of the Wild, what have you? Why is there a classification? Why do we separate games for impact from the rest of them?
I mean, I would love someone to have a like an intelligent answer to like smack me around on this one, but I think that like the distinctions are mostly silly. I think make games that are good for the world. Some games might save lives. Some games might educate people. Some games might just tell a really important story. But you can like do all of those things with the intention of making a game that should be good to exist in the world. And I think like you can measure the different outcomes that you want for your specific game to do that. But like I get frustrated when people get hung up with like, is it gamification? Is it games for change? Is it social impact? And all of the
I'm going to
stuff.
date myself a little bit here. When I was growing up, a friend of mine mastered asteroids. He actually had, where they come and put the little special meter on it kind of thing so that they could score even the higher score and took it all the way. He had incredible hand-eye coordination, but that's about the only skill he gained out of all that time and effort that he did doing it. To me, a serious game or a game for impact is one where not only are they going to have mastery of the game mechanics and get to the end or take it further than it has been, but they're also going to come away with it with a skill set that they can use elsewhere. Whether it's problem solving, whether it's a better understanding of the way systems relate in the environment or the ecosystem, or a better understanding of how history unfolded in certain directions or why things ended up the way they did today. Like I said, the game helps them develop those skills, but then they can take it out after they've left the game and start applying it to the world around them and hopefully making it a better place, which is the core idea behind Games for Change.
I like Carl's answer.
Well, so funders at the table, what do you guys think? I mean, when you're funding something, does it need to be a Games for Change, or does it need to just be something that's awesome? Does it, where do you guys delineate? Do you?
Yeah, so from the NEA side, we actually have review criteria. One is artistic excellence, which looks at quality, essentially, and the other side is artistic merit. And artistic merit can take into account a number of factors, one of them being, the potential to be a model of some sort for the field, for the arts field. So we're definitely looking at it from an artistic lens, which is why, for example, with Tracy Fullerton's work, it was very easy to see that, Walden, a game, is an art game. Not only because she's using a source of literature for the game, but also there are artistic skills that went into the game as well as artistic skills that come out of playing that game, such as observation, analysis, and critique, as well as reflection. So that's what we're looking for from our side at the NEA.
Great, and at the Department of Education, I tend to use the term learning game. Obviously, it's something that's going to be used in conjunction with what it needs to be learned in a classroom and in school and aligning to standards. Typically, the games adapt to individual learners. They provide formative assessment data back to the teachers so that the teacher knows how well students are doing in certain areas. They also act as assessments, like Eric was talking about, that will someday hopefully reduce the need for end of year.
Utterly destroy them.
Yes.
Assessments?
Standardized tests.
So, and reduce the time that assessments take. My daughter today did a pre-SAT test. It took 3 hours. She's 10 years old. Think about how crazy that is.
Oh.
Can we create a game that might be able to reduce the time there? Nonetheless, learning games, but can they be, AAA? Why not? Why not take the best AAA game and embed the learning opportunities,
Amen.
make them more explicit, align them to standards in physics or chemistry or history or whatever topic it is? I think that's an open frontier for developers to come along. I know Minecraft and Angry Birds, those types of games have looked to embed concrete instructional opportunities. I think that's a really exciting next step for the field.
Yeah, we've got some of our friends at NASA who I think did a really wise thing a couple of years ago, which was, we're not a game house, right? We're not a developer. So what we're going to do is give all of our super huge science brains to Rovio and make sure that the physics in Angry Birds space is aligned to science, and the best science, right? And I think that's a really smart model that's happening in the government. So, but now, Carl, you guys make stuff in-house, right? At Archives?
Yes, we do. We're not making a huge amount right now because, quite honestly, that's really not where our budget is. We can't afford to be trying to make a AAA.
You should get Lakita to fund you guys.
We don't have huge people that can spend a lot of time doing nothing but designing, graphic art assets or coming up with the music So we're really looking to do a lot of partnership and alliances with other people because our core mission, as stated right in our requirement, is not make games for the people. It's to make our materials accessible for the people. So it really makes more sense for a game designer to come to us and say, we're really trying to flesh out this, Depression era thing or whatever. Can you help us find more stories, more information so that we can enrich or enliven and make a better product available? And in which case, we'll be all over that like a chicken on a June bug. I mean, we will, do what we can to help out because that furthers our mission. It gets people more aware of our assets and resources, which again brings us back in. And thirdly, it creates an incredible amount of fun and games where people are learning and enjoying themselves. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a triple win. So I've been told, find what you can for partnership opportunities. If it comes down to a situation where we need to foot the bill or come up with some money to hire outside people to do it, we can, but as you were talking about funders, you got to jump through all sorts of hurdles and hoops with the people who's actually writing the check for you to make sure that they understand what the benefit is going to be. And because we're a federal government and federal agency, we need to make triple sure that what we are doing helps everybody.
So I've got a couple more questions, but I'll also open it up now. If you guys have anything that you want to bother us about, questions you have, feel free. Just throw your hand up and dive in. Yeah, sir.
Well, the biggest problem is budget. We are competing to write these games against the AAA games for interest of people. They expect it to be better products, and there's no way in the world I can make an educational game on the budget that I have when it's competing against a $30 million budget for other AAA games. So let's be realistic here now. Yes, there are artsy programs that come out of nowhere that are really interesting and innovative and great, but they're not great to have big commercial successes. And they're one in a million. And for ones who are trying to do an economic budget, how do we survive here?
So yeah, commercialization is the back end of our program, and the game developers, it is the biggest challenge, no question about it. So the funding, our awards top off at about $1,050,000 for development, and then commercialization after that. So, there are a lot of models. There's a lot of the developers are trying to build relationships with schools, gain traction with user numbers with schools. So it's all the traditional methods. If you have any great ideas, let us know. We'll throw them into the hat, and we'll keep at it.
I think it's more the other way around, that for us to start thinking about these great ideas, we have to be convinced it's a viable commercial partnership. We're willing to experiment. Doing an experiment that fails, but still, it can be done. Just, you realize that it's scary.
Well, and that's how the SBIR is built, right? Is around a two-phased, like, try this for 6 months, and then we'll give you a little bit of money, and then right, and then the rest of it comes at the second. Is
Yeah,
that-
it's, the phase one is for you to, investigate with a method and to see if it works for $150,000, and if it shows promise, the additional 900,000 comes through. And then at that point, the commercialization models go into effect, whether it's raising VC funding, whether it's working with distribution partners, licensing agreements, and so forth.
Just to give you a comparison, the latest numbers are something like 65% of the app games and app stores, their games, don't make their development costs back.
So the good news is you don't have to pay the government back.
You already did.
You
That's
also
a,
get, you get 100% of the IP.
Oh.
So it's really a grant to you. And
And if you
we're-
use
we're
our
hoping-
resources, it doesn't cost you anything.
We're hoping that you hit it big and that you have 1 million users and 10 million users, and that you have a huge impact
and that big
in the field of education.
D of Ed seal right in the middle of the.
Well, you know, I did want to note, you can't use the seal
Oh,
on your games.
Do that.
Sorry about that. So that's, but what we want you to do is we want you to use the research that we require that you conduct to produce evidence that your game is working. And then you wouldn't use it for marketing, but you certainly would use it to say, our game improves learning under these conditions. And that is a different kind of seal of approval, but is pretty powerful if you can conduct that kind of research.
And to build on that point too, I think like a lot of these games where we're talking about games for social impact or for a cause, there are multiple models for them to exist in the world. And there's also, so like in education, you're not just making a game that needs to compete on its own merits as a fun game for consumers. You're making something that's a product for teachers and for principals and for district leaders. That is a hard market to navigate, but it is also a big market. There are upwards of 1,600 school districts in this country. There is a ton of money in ed tech right now. It's supposed to be 250 billion in the next 4 years, that market. And so these are not like things that live just in the games industry. These are projects that can span different sectors. And so I think a lot of that is making sure that we are giving those support to developers who are willing to venture outside of the games industry and think about how this technology impacts some of those other places. And it is hard and scary, but it's also really important. And there's opportunities there, I think.
You had your hand up in the back for a long time.
Hi, I'm from Pittsburgh, and I'm trained as a teacher, but moved over because I see a need for development of games in schools. But I want to know, really in concrete terms, how do you begin the submission process? Maybe more for the NEA and the Department of Ed. Do you just go to the website, or like what is the concrete, and how much do I need to submit, basically? Like, do I just have an idea, or do you need to see actual program coding? Really, where do I go, and what is needed to begin that process, maybe? So.
Yeah, I can talk a bit about from the NEA side. So in addition to being an eligible applicant, being a 501c3, for example, our guidelines are posted on our website at arts.gov. Easy to remember, right? Arts.gov. And also, we are a project funder. So you're coming to us for a distinct project. And so that would depend on if you're applying to the Media Arts Division for a specific game, or if you're applying to the Arts Education Media Arts, category, that would be for the teaching and learning involved in the project, working directly with students. So we would want to see things like, if you're coming to arts education, assessment tools, rubrics, in addition to your own work, as well as any student work that's come out of the project before. For example, if you've piloted this, with a school or Boys and Girls Club, for example, and you have work samples that you can show us from that previous endeavor, we want to see examples of that. But you'd also have to talk about your work in terms of opportunities for assessment of student learning, and also, what specific artistic skills students are gaining in the projects, and how you are assessing those skills according to either state or national arts education standards. Sorry if it's getting a little wonky. And also,
You wouldn't be here if you didn't want it.
Yeah.
Wonk it up.
And also, call a specialist, call me. There's some other things you have to keep in mind. It's not just a direct application process. You have to make sure you have your DUNS number, which is, a process in order to receive federal funds.
Can you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but could Awesome Hat Games in the back here, could he apply to both your departments? Could he get money from you both?
He could apply to every program as long as you don't accept funding from every program. Of course, imagine that happened. That would be amazing. So at Department of Education, I would say it's a very heavy lift to do the proposal. It would take a lot of your bandwidth, a lot of your capacity. You don't have those things to devote 6 months to writing a government proposal for an award that has like a 5% hit rate. So that's pretty dismal. But on the other side of the coin, you have to be in it to win it. So how do you balance that equation? So what supports do we provide? You can go to our website, and there is a page new to the program that you could spend half hour looking at. You could see what steps you need to take. You could look at all the awards that have been made the past few years to give you an idea of the scope and the types of games that are being funded. And also you can email me, and I'm a free service, and I will talk to you on a Friday for half hour, and then I'll give you a hard homework assignment, and then maybe we'll talk a few weeks later if you call me back. I talked to 250 companies last year. That's by far the most exciting part of my job is to talk to you to see if I can save you some time and give you a few tips on who to partner with to help you write the proposal that you don't have time to write.
Yeah, and the bottom line is we're so approachable. I think a lot of people think, federal government, they're not going to talk to us. We are here. Please call us.
Real.
Please.
Yeah,
Please.
real.
Yeah. I mean, I'm coming at it from this perspective of I'm a not federally funded person, and I am just an enthusiast who kind of is tangentially associated, but like the reason why this group got started by Constance and then by Mark and continued by Eric is because we are just folks who love this thing too, right? And we all play games, whether they're tabletop or digital, and we all are enthusiasts in addition to getting to work in it in some capacity. So it's us. We're just you, and feel free to email and make sure if there's somebody that isn't here, we'll make sure we can connect you to them. And I speak probably openly for everyone in the guild that we're happy to talk. So
Yeah, I was going to say, the one thing to try to remember, at least we get just as frustrated by the lengthy process and the paperwork and the processing checks and all that kind of stuff. But you got to think about the rest of America wants to make darn sure that we're not wasting tax money. So we need to be able to justify the time and effort that we're spending on behalf of everyone else. But that doesn't mean that we're going to sit here and act as ogres and gatekeepers in front of everything because we get to keep all the money we don't give to you. That's not the case. Like I said, we would just as soon, if you really want to get involved and you really want to try to do it, we want to try to help you succeed.
Cool.
And that's really the message that I wanted to make sure we're imparting upon you guys.
I'll throw one other opportunity out there too. We recently launched an EdSim challenge, another colleague at Department of Ed and the Office of Career and Technical Education. So if you go to edsim.com, it's slightly different structure in terms of how you apply and the funding that you can get. It is a prize challenge, which means they're making an open call for people to submit their ideas for how virtual and augmented reality can be used for a career in technical education.
And it's for simulation, right?
For simulation,
okay.
but it's also fairly broadly defined.
Okay.
And so if you have a proposal, the initial phase of this is people put their proposals in, then they will whittle down the field a little bit, and then they'll get to the next phase, they'll provide some funding. But the idea is to do this sort of signal out in the dark to say, hey, VR and AR, as this industry emerges, we want you working on education, and we're gonna put some money up front to say, if you solve this hard challenge, we will pay you if you make a thing that does that. So it's another one to check out.
I know I saw some hands up. Yeah.
It seems like some of the problem might be, in regards to some of the questions asked before, that the visibility of this group isn't as great as it could be, or I guess.
We're like the Masons that way.
So in getting away from the Masons, is there like a potential for a cross-agency group or website or whatever to exist sometime in the future where it's like, hey, I have a question about something, and maybe it applies to like two groups. Maybe I could go to this website and say like, oh, okay, maybe I can apply for this, or I can at least know that something else exists or something like that.
Related to that,
I think that is a great.
That's a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
idea.
Let's
We'll bring it up at the next meeting.
Writing that down.
I think
Yeah.
Games for Change should be an organization that provides like a funding opportunity website. I'll mention that to them.
Yeah.
But you could also just contact me, and I can, and Eric and
Yeah.
Alan, and we'll connect you, hopefully connect you, save you a lot of time. That's our goal, is to make it efficient and effective for you, so you can do what you're gonna do.
Yeah, start here for now, emailing us, and we'll make sure that you get connected to the right person. Yeah.
So, I've gone through like another type of certification process with another government agency. So I was just wondering if there's like, if you have to put money into this to be able to get an award for a seal of approval or something like that afterwards.
How do you mean? Can you elaborate?
Like when I built a product, I had to then certify that it was meeting a certain standard.
Oh, okay.
So like they were grading me on my product. Is it like that, or is it just grant?
I think it's going to vary. I mean, kind of, for us, it's about post, award reporting. And I think obviously that varies amongst agencies. For us at the NEA, we do want to know, what happened as a result of your goals that you set forward. What did you learn along the way? It may not be the same for, say, SBIR. I mean, do you guys?
We don't endorse or give a stamp of approval to you. You develop a great education, technology, learning product or game, and then do hopefully solid research that will show its promise for improving learning. And then you go out in the world and see what happens. Our program, though, hopefully gives you the springboard to allow you to shoot for the stars and do that.
Yeah.
So I have a question. I don't know if this is like the first half of it, but what exactly are you looking for in terms of the school data and progress?
We answered that explicitly in the first half. I'm sorry. No, so sorry. How do we ask for our data?
Yeah, because I'm a data researcher. I actually do like work on educational animations, but not games.
Yeah.
So if I were to make the step over, what exactly are you looking for like guaranteed approval? Are we just looking for projections, or you want like a longitudinal study already done? Do you want like a dissertation?
No. So it's a development process that you're working with the developer, right? So you'd start out with a small scale pilot study to get user feedback and concept testing from teachers and students. Yeah, I would use this. This is how I would use it. And then once a prototype's developed, you would graduate to a small scale study with a couple classrooms. And if you get feedback from that, you'd graduate to a larger study. In our program, we don't require you to do a massive randomized controlled trial with 100 classrooms.
Yeah.
That takes 5 years. We want you to do iterative research. So at the end of an SBIR project, you might test it in 6 or 8 or 10 classrooms, and you might get a control group that is studying the same content to be able to say, hey, this game may show promise for improving student learning under this condition.
And for us at the NEA, I mean, if you were to apply to the Arts Education Division for a media arts project, it's really about how do you use data to inform your programmatic design. So we're not, similar to Ed, we're not saying, you have to do this large study, but if you have some tested methods, we'd like to hear about it. I mean, your application is being reviewed by a national panel from all over. So the more data you can show us as it relates to the specific project, the better, but we're not asking for a lot.
And the last critical piece from the Institute of Education Sciences is we believe our program provides you the funding to do the type of research that you need to do to validate the technology so that schools will use it. So we do provide that unique funding resource, where otherwise, if you're developing a game, you're probably not going to devote 25% of your company's budget to research. We're giving you the funding to do that.
So also follow up with the Department of Education projects, are they trying to follow Common Core somewhat, or is that like?
It's a moving target these days.
Sure.
So I mean, that's a
Right at about now.
Yeah, we're out of time. Common Core is great. We love it.
So standards, the standards movement has, I believe, been helpful to game developers so that you can zero in on what the learning objectives are a little more concretely. So states will likely have standards in the future, and those would be good to align to your game so that they could be used in the classroom.
Let me also pivot that a little and say, to illustrate it too, so we did this White House Game Jam 2 years ago, and it was focused on education, and it was focused on this idea of if you got really creative, high-quality people from the games industry who don't know anything about education and recognize that, and you got teachers and students, and you put them in the same room and you lock them in there for 48 hours to make something awesome, some awesome prototypes for education, would they actually do that? But going into that, we had to come up with a theory of the case of how would you structure that to be successful. And one of the things that actually was really useful was going through national standards, Common Core, but others as well, Next Generation Science standards, National History standards, National Art standards, and figuring out how do you translate those standards, which do not dictate how you teach something. They only dictate the final knowledge that is supposed to exist in a student after they have been through that. So they're actually really good as game challenges. If you take them out of education lingo and you put them into game developer lingo, you can restate them as these challenge sentences to say, hey, a student should understand cost-benefit analysis, and say, like, could you play a game that helps you figure that out through a strategy or some sort of strategy game. And so, over 48 hours, we got 12 or so prototypes of really amazing, compelling things. If you go on YouTube and you search White House Game Jam, all of them are listed there. Some of them have gone on to be commercially available games. And so it was a really powerful example of how these standards are actually really useful for ed tech development. I don't know why I'm talking to you exactly, but who was the one who actually asked about this?
Thank you.
Yelling at you, but well, so these standards, the other thing that they do, which is really helpful, is the more states that are doing things that are similar and are stating that they want to achieve similar goals at certain levels of education, the more robust that market becomes for you to create really high quality content that can reach a lot of students. So when we're talking about, is this a viable market, it becomes much more viable when you can create a product and know that thousands of school districts will be able to use it and it will meet their goals, versus if it's just maybe going to help someone, but you're not really sure that they're committed to that goal.
Something that I, speaking as a former high school teacher, in the arts, I taught high school theater, and I realized really quickly that standards are great, but they are really hard to enforce in the classroom. And so, because I couldn't align my curricula to a standard that was super kind of squishy. So what I did instead was have the standards aligned to my curricula, right? And I think I probably am saying something that a lot of teachers do out in the world, which is, here's how I teach. It's theater arts 9.2, and it's I can justify 9.7 and, oh, yeah, it's 9.10 too. Like, if you're creating a piece of content that a teacher wants to use, that teacher will then find a way to incorporate that into their standards to make the justification to their administration that it works.
Right.
That happens a lot.
Just say-
Policy is reactive, right?
I'd say to build off of that, if you think of it from the reverse side of it, you have this really awesome game or product that you've made available, and this is how I was taught to think about it. There's a teacher out there somewhere who knows that they're going to have to teach this next week, and they've maybe only got 20 minutes tonight in between eating and putting the kids to bed where they got to try to look and see what can they find that's going to work for their particular class right at that particular moment. So they're going to go out and they're going to scan what's particularly available, whether it's documents from the Smithsonian or Library of Congress or the National Archives, hopefully, and other resources like that there, and they're looking for the things that are going to match what they're going to have to cover. And so if you are putting out your material and you're designing your game to hit those standards and meet those milestones, the greater chance that that teacher's going to look at it and say, you know what, let's give this one a chance. Let's give this a try. Or if they hear from other teachers who have been able to successfully use it, the word of mouth really goes far in making something go
Yeah.
like this. But then again, also realize that after this teacher totally buys in and they really like it, a lot of them are going to have to go back to their supervisor, their administrator, their school board, and say, can we please spend money on this? And so you're going to have to be able to convince those people too. And they're the ones who are going to be looking at it saying, how does it justify it by whatever standards that
And
they're
it helps
particular-
if the Department of Ed has made you prove that your game is useful, even if they won't give you the damn logo.
I think that is a lovely note to end on. Give them the damn logo, Ed. God. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all for coming up here. We'll, I think, until, hey, Pez, do we lose the room right now?
Let me check and see what's going on.
Okay, so we'll be here for a few minutes and hang out if you have questions for any of us. We've got cards. I'll leave this up. And I'll upload this to an open Dropbox and put the link in this spreadsheet so you can download this. So get this link.
Awesome.